so this is a very interesting game that I have with an opponent that's actually, I would say, a stronger player than me. He's a very strong player, pretty good. In fact, when we first started these series of games, he was actually rated a 1800. So he was around 1800. I was probably I just became a 1600 on this thing. I haven't really played much long daily chess on this particular site in a long time. So this was a new account for me. And you can say this is a black line versus the Esau method. So a lot of people, don't understand how that battle would actually entail. Someone playing the black line versus the Esau. Because to be honest, the black line Esau are fairly similar in a certain extent. The main difference I would say is the Esau is you don't take control of the center at all. Um, you don't take control of your pawns directly. While the black line, you at least have a foothold on the center. And both systems, typically the king doesn't really castle. I can admit sometimes the Esau, they may actually castle queenside, or they may just move, just keep themselves in the center. While in the black line, most of the time you don't castle. You rarely ever castle. Sometimes you may castle king side, and if you do castle king side, sometimes you may actually castle by hand. To be honest, you rarely with someone who played the black line castle queen side. I have seen people castle on the queen side using the black line, but to be honest, if you were able to castle on the queen side, then that means your opponent played the opening very badly. It's very hard to castle queen side and not be punished if you're playing the black line. All right, so I'm playing the black line with the white pieces. So you can call this the reverse Philidor. So usually to me the best way to get into the black white position for whites is to start up with d4. Now if you're playing black, it takes a couple of preparation moves before you can get your pawn in the center like this. But since you white, you can do it right away. The only downfall of starting off with e4 versus starting off with d3 is that your opponent can literally stop you from playing the black line or the reverse Philidor by just going pawn to d5, and this pretty much stop you from playing the black line. Now, in my case, there, I'm not afraid of this. Typically, if someone do this to me, I say, you know what? Let's go for it. We're going to trade queens. You can go here. We trade, and then we just play from here. Now, some people don't like this position, but to be honest with you, with my style of play, I really study the end game, and I'm very, very confident in game. In fact, I prefer trading the queens off early. It's just a much easier game. In fact, I find that a lot of strong players are only as strong as their queen, meaning that as long as they have a queen on the board, they play good. But if the queen is traded, they play way below their rated score that you see. Because most of them never really study Rook endgame, which is very popular or more common to come across in end games. All right, but anyway, my opponent did not do that. He played the Esau method, so he actually did d6. And there's two ways you can do that. You can do d6 or you can do c6. I prefer playing c6, but to be honest with you, he played the best move, which is d6. All right, so I do my d3. I couldn't move my knight up, but there was no rush. He didn't really challenge me or anything like that. Just might as well just do this little pawn move right here, and then he actually do an unusual move. Normally, most players will play c6 from here with black, but he decided to move the knight in, which is pretty active. And then I moved my knight, and then he finally played the c6. All right, so he's doing the Isha, and I do the same thing. So I get my knight into the game here. So it looks like I'm trying to castle, but to be honest with you, I'm not going to castle. Or at least, typically I won't castle. All right, so he playing the book move. The book move is to move the h6, which is a good move. And then I get my knight in the game. And then he does the signature move of the Isha, which is the G5. And the computer actually rated this really good for him. It's not the best move, but it's actually a good move. It looks like a silly move, but it's actually really, really strong. All right, so the most common reply to a situation like this is normally what I just did, which is to move your your H palm to prevent your knight from being kicked. And he probably expected that because when I play the Elshad system, this is what most of my players, opponents do as well. And then he get his bishop on a long diagonal. All right, so it's very important to make this bishop look stupid, and the best way to do that is blunt him. You make him eat shit. So by putting my pawn on c6, I literally say eat shit, motherfucker. He just can't really do anything. He just eyeing nothing. And that's probably the best move you can do when you're facing someone who's doing Esau, is you do not want to move your pawn up to c4 or d4, because the main thing about the Esau is that they take control of the dark square, and they're really trying to go after your d pawn. So it's usually the main thing is you attacking the d pawn, and sometimes you also attack the b pawn as well. All right, so he moves back with his knight. I do the same thing, so two can play that game. He moves his knight up, and I move my knight up. And then from here he does a pretty strange move. I don't know what he were thinking as far as doing this. He moves his knight into my camp, threatening to take my bishop and my pawn, and I just snap him up. Now, to be honest with you, I prefer to keep my bishops over my knight, but in this case there, I saw a free pawn. It was a free pawn, so this I go ahead. So to get the pawn, I threaten his knight. I mean not his knight, but his bishop, as well as his pawn. So I basically fork the two. So he has to make a decision what he's gonna do. So in this case there, I made his bishop go back. So literally he kind of wasted a move here, right? So notice in this case scenario, I'm up several tempos in this case now, right? Not only am I up a tempo because I was playing as white, but I literally forced him to move that piece back. His knights. So if you look here, all his pieces are in the home square. They're literally on their home squares. He had made no progress other than two pawn moves, and now he's down a pawn. And that's one of the things you want to do when you're playing against a stronger player. There's two main strategies I like to use. One of them is to make them waste move. A second thing you can do is to make their queen inactive. You either make them inactive by making them babysit a pawn, or try to trade off their queen. Because if you can trade off their queen, a lot of these strong players are not as strong as they seem if they do not have a queen. All right, so he finally gets a piece on the board off the back rank, and I start do a little pawn storm. So I move my pawn up, which was a questionable move. All right, so from here he does what I thought he was gonna do, which is move his rook on that foul, and that's the main reason I moved my pawn up, is to literally blunt him. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking if he tried to move his if he would have tried to move this pawn up, then I would have moved this pawn up as well, and then I would have closed the foul up by moving the other pawn. So I literally just want to make sure he has I guess no access point. His rook is just also looking stupid, right? So remember, previously I tried to make his bishop have no good square, and now I'm trying to make sure his rook also have no good open foul. He has a semi-open foul, but I'm gonna keep that close. That's the main goal. All right, so now I actually move my queen up here. Now this queen move serves two purposes. In the Esau, typically this bishop moves to this square right here. That's usually where this bishop develops. It either develops by going to that square, or it goes to this square right here. So these are the two squares the bishop normally lands. And I wanted to make sure it doesn't go there without losing a pawn, as well as to pin down that bishop from getting into the game. Because as long as my queen is here, I'm attacking this particular pawn. So I want to make it where he can't really move that bishop yet. Because Yes, I can stop the bishop from moving to this square for the time being because I'll lose. He will lose a pawn, but pretty soon he may just move this pawn to this square right here. So it's kicking that knight out the way. So I want to make it where if he were to kick me out the way, he still won't be able to get this bishop into the game because he'll be losing the pawn here. And then also by me putting my piece here, he would have to either defend it with his queen or his rook. If he defended with the rook, I'd be happy in that case scenario because that means he can't castle queenside. Because typically when someone plays the Esau system, they'll typically castle queenside. They're never going to castle kingside. Um, or if I get him to commit his queen to protect that pawn moving over here to move into C7, then I achieve a secondary goal, which is to make his queen inactive. So it's literally on an inactive file or inactive diagonal, and it's babysitting a pawn that is worth 1 point. Now I know it was like I'm attacking a pawn that's only worth 1 point, but remember in my case scenario, I'm happy to be in a passive position because I play perfectly fine without my queen. But most of these strong players who have these high ratings do not play good without their queen. So if I can get him to play passive with his queen, then that's a victory for me. All right, and he does something really silly. He actually offered a queen trade. And I love this. I love it when my opponent does. I love it when my opponents beg me to trade queens. And you know what? I oblige. I take that bitch off the board and we trade. And he probably look at this position and say, okay, great. I developed my rook without even have to move it. Because now this rook have this semi-open file and I'm happy. But to be honest with you, it's actually what he did was not that bad by actually getting an open file for his rook. But I see through that. I want to make sure every move he does, as okay, as a black line player, black line is a very great opening for someone who's great at counter attacking. But being a counter attacker, you also are you get into the habit of also realizing your opponent's resources and their thought process. And I know what he wanted to do. He wanted to make he wanted to take advantage of his open foul. So my next move is I kind of blunt it. So I blunt this open foul. So this rook is literally just staring at shit. So it can't do anything. And from here, his only objective from here, and I predict this, is he's going to try to march these pawn down. So he's going to march the pawn and just sacrifice to open up the foul. So my main objective from this particular point of view is I blunted his rook, but then he's going to most likely he's going to do some crazy move to still try to open up the foul. So I want to make it where if he does do this silly move, I either leave him with double what do you call it double pawns, where they double and isolate it, or make it such that if he were to try to uh, move his pawn up, he's actually will be giving me a pawn for free. So I'm trying to isolate the pawn or make it in such a way where if he does try to do this stunt, then he's going to give me a pawn for free. And to give someone who's very good at in games, I'm not gonna say I'm like really really great, but I study it more than the average Joe. Meaning I don't just play these positions with computers or just read the book. I actively have partners that we play in game positions with, and I usually play on the losing side, and it's actually good to play on the losing side because when you play on the losing side, it makes you better at trying to defend. And I actually learn more by playing on the losing side than on the winning side because I can find resources to not only egg out a draw or even know how to actually win the position as well. All right, so he get his bishop back on the diagonal, and then at his castle. And from here, he does exactly what I told you he's going to do. He's going to try to move the pawns up, but he needs to prepare by moving the pawn up. He's going to most likely try to get this pawn into the game, and then be a pawn march, and then he just open up the foul. And I saw through that. I was fine with that. So I had my own plans in mind. So to counteract that, I attack him in the center. I go straight to the center, so his king is not castle. So I want to make sure he doesn't feel comfortable with the fact that he's not castle. So remember, I told you my objective is to isolate the pawns. So using the Eshar method, the system, this pawn is a guard dog. The D pawn is a guard dog. Any pawn that makes it to the fifth rank is going to be captured. He played the best move. This is what she's supposed to do, the Eshar method. And then now I capture with my knights. Now I was prepared for him doing some other moves, so I figured from here right now I have a pawn. I have a knight that's on the same diagonal as his bishop. So most likely he was going to try to do some crazy knight move to make a discover attack. But I was prepared for that. I was like, okay, well, you can try to do your crazy attack, but this is not gonna be a berserker knight. I'm not gonna go down without a fight. You make a crazy move, I'm gonna make a crazy move, but I'm not gonna lose this knight. And he does do the discover attack on this knight, and I take. And then he does that, and then from here, what I want to do from here is I want to move this pawn here. And the main reason I want to move this pawn here is I want to stop him from moving his pawn up here and then storming up and breaking up um, my structure to create an open file for him. And I did do that move. Okay, okay. That move. And I knew exactly what he's going to do. He's going to challenge it. And then from here, I attack the bishop. He retreat back. And then I take the pawn. He take back with here. And then I do this move right here. So this move is I'm preparing my own discover attack. And I basically forced him into a predicament. Now, computer told me that they preferred that I would have tried to do a crazy berserker move by just taking this pawn. If he would have take back, then I'll actually pin this bishop. He can protect it. And there's a number of things I can do here. From here, I can just actually do this. That would be actually a good move right here. Yeah, actually pretty good. You just have to move out the way, and then get this bishop for free while still attacking this bishop. So that would have been actually a decent move. All right, but I'm not sure if I saw that. No, I didn't. I didn't see that. I guess why did I do that? I didn't see that one. I didn't see that move. That was actually a good move. I should have done that. I guess maybe reason I didn't do that. If I did that, he can go berserk as well. I do this first. Okay, okay. Yeah, that would have been yeah. Don't worry about that part. Yeah, yeah, that would yeah. I guess so. That would have been good. Yeah, if you go berserk, it'll cost him. Okay, I didn't really calculate that one. All right, but I decided just to make him feel uncomfortable, so I moved my rook here. So this was not really the best move. I should have actually attacked attacked the pawn, and then move my rook there. But okay, it's good. So you can't really play accurate chess all the way. All right, I forced him to castle. Now from here, I'm very happy with this because his main objective earlier, remember I told you he wanted this rook to have this open file, but I forced him to castle. And I know this is not, for some people, they don't really consider this that big of a deal, but for a player like me, this is a mini victory. It's a mini victory because his main goal of doing that queen trade earlier is that he was okay with the queen trade as long as he had an open file. But the open file that he worked so hard to achieve, he basically had to, I guess, forget about it. Just forget about this goal of his that he had, and actually castle. So I was really happy when I saw him did this. Cause remember, as when you playing players like this, you want them to waste tempos. So I was very happy that I got him to waste a tempo. And then from here, I went berserk, and then I captured a pawn. And then he goes berserk and captured a pawn. And I would normally keep on going berserk and take a pawn here again, but his take would actually come with a check. So I didn't want that. So I just capture his pawn, the bishop. Then he takes, and then I do this fork right here. So I fork his rook and the bishop because I want to take away his bishop. He moves up to attack my knight, and then from here I had a couple ways to take, but I decided to take it with the knight, and then retrade rooks. And I was really happy with his position because he has so many weaknesses as far as his pawns go. Now, players like this, notice from my earlier game, I predicted most of the move. I should have told you this, is that from this move on, everything here, it was crazy. So when I made this move right here, 8 moves were preconditioned on my end. I predicted him 8 moves deep. So that means this is 1, 2, 3. Oh, my count is off. So I'm just going to count myself. So I have 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, and then 8. All right, so I pretty much predicted. I think I even had this right here. So all the way up to this position right here was all preconditioned. So he triggered my move in precondition. So that's another good thing about when you I guess when you become, I'm not gonna say I'm great, but I learned to be able to predict my opponents. You have to be very good at predicting what your opponent's gonna do. So as a counter attacker, this is what I'm trying to say. As a counter attacker, I'm always aware of what my opponents are trying to do. And I try my very best to neutralize anything they're going to do. And it's kind of hard to neutralize what they're going to do if you can't really predict what they're trying to do. So I predicted all of that. Now, usually I'm not able to get that well where I predicted 8 moves deep. But, in this case scenario, it was pretty easy to figure this guy out since I've seen a lot of his videos. So I have a good understanding of how he plays. Um, so even though this is one of our first interaction, I feel like I played him hundreds of times because I've seen hundreds of his video, and every time he shows a position, I'm always asking myself, okay, what could his opponent have done to improve the position? So I end up winning this game, but I feel like I lost to him many times because sometimes when I'm looking at some of the games that he play, um, I cannot see what the opponents can do to actually save the position. There may be time I'm able to find a way to draw, but those are pretty rare. In fact, the only thing I can recommend for the opponent is that it is play the opening bad. And a lot of time that is the case. The opponent is literally play the opening bad, or he's very tricky. So some of his tricks, he tricks me on them. So being I've seen his play before, uh, his tricks was not really gonna work on me. So I just knew. So he basically fell into my plan. All right, so we went to this trade, and then this is a really good move on my end because I know what he want to do. He wants to do this pawn break. All right, so he wanted to get the pawn break. So the first thing I do is I eliminate the pawn break while attacking them at the same time. So I move my rook to e5. So I'm attacking his weak pawn. So he goes to protect it, and then I hit another pawn. All right, so he goes to protect that one as well, but then he drops a pawn. All right, so he dropped. This was a very fun game. It was very fun because it was a rook versus it was a rook in game, and rook in game is something that I pretty much specialize in. I study a lot of rook in games. All right, so he went back. I was pretty happy with that one. I think he should have went forward. His best route would be to move his king forward and be active, but I guess he would really want to protect those pawns. But to be honest with you, these pawns are horrible. Like they can't do anything. He can't really move them forward because they're going to be taken. So this is literally one of my dream positions. Remember I told you earlier, I saw this position way back when we first did the queen trade. Way back when we did a queen trade, I literally saw not this exact position, but a goal that I was trying to achieve. Remember I told you one of my goals I was trying to achieve is to make sure he did not have an open foul, or if he does somehow get the open foul, he's going to have weaknesses as far as the double isolated pawns. And I was able to achieve that. And he lost a pawn just now. And he does his pawn thrust, one that I predicted. And then from here, I want to keep my pawns intact. So if he were to do it, it's going to be all cool. And then I develop my king up. I move my king up. Now there was many places I could move my king. I could either move up here, move here, or here. And I wanted to keep my option open. I was not quite sure if my king was needed on the king side or on the queen side, and I want to keep this guy guessing. Because right now his king is trapped. His king is trapped on that back rank, on the 7 rank. And my king has so much activity. So I want to keep this guy guessing as far as what I'm going to do. So if I were to move my king to D2, then he know I'm going to go to the king side. Or if I were to move my king to to B2, B as in boy, then he know I'll be keeping my queen on the queen side and targeting those pawns. So by moving my king to C2 instead, I kind of kept him guessing. Because I can still go on the queen side. I'm more close to the queen side, but I can also go to the king side as well. Why would I want to go to the king side? Because he's just going to trade out this pawn anyway here. Well, I can go to the king side and help escort my pawn to get queen. So that's probably the reason why I want to go to the king side, is to help escort my pawn. So this way my rook can be more active and really harass the king, his king. And then here, my opponent made this one move right here, and then I finally make this move, which says, hey, you know what? You kept this pawn hanging out like this for a while. I want you to make a decision. You're going to have to take this pawn. So I wanted to take it, and I had a pre-move set up where obviously if he take it, then I was going to take it with this right here. So I was going to take it with the H pawn. So this way my rook is still protecting one of the pawns. So he wasn't really have any he wouldn't be able to attack any of my weakness easily. But anyway, we didn't. That was about it as far as that, because I don't think he actually made a move past this point. Okay, he did. He did do a check, and these opponents always do that. They go for these checks. No, it's not. This is not his move. This is what computer said he could have done. Yeah, because after I made this move, my opponent timed out. He basically stopped playing. It was pretty bad. If you can look at the score is a 3.91. So the computer basically evaluated his position as if I'm up 4 pawns. Am I up 4 pawns? I think I'm only up. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. He has 3 pawns. So I might actually only up. I'm only up 2 pawns. I might actually up 2 pawns, but the way they evaluate position is if I'm up 4 pawns. For one thing, he was down. He lost a few tempos, and I have connected pass pawns. So those connected pass pawns, if they were to get to the 6th rank, then they're unstoppable. The rook can't do anything about them. If I were to somehow be able to get these pawns on the 6th rank, like one of these pawns, I just need 2 connected pass pawn in the 6th rank. Once I get those in the 6th rank, there's nothing that he can do. Then they would definitely be queen. He would have to basically sacrifice his rook for one of the pawns. But I think it would still be one of them was still queen and stuff like that. So it would have been a very bad position. and my opponent basically gave up. Even though he timed out, he most likely just timed out because he didn't see any good moves.